Thank you very much, our Program Director, Abi Modise, and all of you esteemed ladies and gentlemen from the media. We are most appreciative indeed that you came to this meeting, and good morning to you all. First of all, we would like to thank you for being here at this report back on the state of rhino poaching in our country, South Africa, as well as the progress report that we'll be giving today on the integrated strategic management of rhino approach that we have actually been implementing throughout the time. And today's briefing essentially covers a period between January and June 2017. Our integrated strategic management approach continues to be implemented by the Department of Defense, which is here, led by our Minister Mapisa Ngakula, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, who's, by the way, also chairing the security cluster. She's here in a capacity as both a participant department but also as a leader of all of us in that cluster. We also have with us here one of the participating departments, the SSA, Ministry of State Security, and its agency. The participants are also Justice, Crime Prevention, and Correctional Services, as well as the Department of Environmental Affairs, and the SAPS, as you know, all of you, and the agencies like SANParks and SARS, and many others that we may not have listed here today. They are all participants, and they've been working very hard throughout the time since we actually started implementing this integrated strategic management approach. And our implementation plan for this integrated strategic management of rhino, as well as the outcomes of a report of a committee of inquiry, were refined during the month-long rhino lab that is better known as lab, either Dr. Ferreira or somebody come here. And we held this rhino lab last year. In addition to the aforementioned role players, ladies and gentlemen, we're saying there's a first set of participants. At the Rhino Lab, we added other participants, and there the number of other public sector departments also joined from the lab time. And these include the departments like Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Rural Development and Land Affairs, as well as Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, Department of Tourism, Social Development, Education, as well as International Relations, and Treasury's Financial Intelligence Center. What we are communicating here is that we had a set of measures under the first integrated management approach. We now move to the lab where there's now inclusion of additional stakeholders, as we have detected the need for them to be part of this initiative from the lab. The lab had further support from important stakeholders, from business, civil society, community representatives, people and parks committee representatives, the Private Rhino Owners Association. We had international organizations like the UNEP, that is the United Nations Environment Program, and NGOs like the WWF, the Peace Park Foundations, and the IUCN, which is also an international and UN organization operating internationally, and the Endangered Wildlife Trust. Now, at this lab, obviously, there were interactions and there were outcomes, and the outcomes of this lab are aligned now to 5 key areas that we had identified before, and there we had arrived at detailed short-term, medium, and long-term implementation plans that are around the following 5 issues. The first one is law enforcement, second one being demand management, the third one being community empowerment, and responsive legislation being the fourth, as well as the fifth one being plans for incentive to stakeholders and improve stockpile management. So those are the 5 key areas. The details thereof I'll not go into, but they are captured in the statement that I hope you have now or you'll get in a minute. Now, although the rollout of the initiative has a time frame through to 2022, a number of quick wins have been identified for implementation that will yield results within a year, meaning that we actually, as we said earlier on, that we looked at long-term, medium-term, short-term. Medium-term and long-term and short-term. So these quick wins are around mainly short-term up to the beginning of the medium-term. And a community rhino ambassadors program is also being rolled out, and the anti-poaching unit as well. And these implementation plans have further ensured that we address budgetary requirements as well as identifying potential investors, because we recognize the fact that there will be lots of money still needed in some of the initiatives that may actually require external funding and investments. We have actually looked at that. And the Rhino Conservation Lab initiatives will be implemented by a broad group of identified stakeholders and tracked within the context of the Biodiversity Lab Delivery Unit, meaning that as we implement, there will be a center which will be doing monitoring and evaluating our programs further. Now, turning to our performance during the period under review, after giving that new approach now that we are embarking upon with additional role players, would like to talk firstly to the area of law enforcement. And in that regard, we start with arrests, investigations, and prosecutions. Ladies and gentlemen, the South African Police Services and the Department of Environmental Affairs continues to lead the campaign against rhino poaching in partnership with the Departments of Defense, Justice, Correctional Services, and the State Security Agency. Obviously, these led by the security cluster, all of us. Our provincial conservation authorities and SANParks continue with the execution of plans inside our provincial and national parks. Would also like to salute these authorities, especially our Ranger Corps, for the good work that they continue to perform in protecting the rhino. They are men and women on the front line, keeping our precious natural resources safe. They all put their lives in the line every day to keep our rhino safe, and on behalf of South Africans, we want to thank each and every one of them. We must also acknowledge that we were all the way made stronger as we're supported by the defense team, as you know, that they continue to manage the borderline security between South Africa and Mozambique, without which we were not going to be able to address this problem, particularly inside the Kruger National Park. Because we are doing battle with this threat on so many fronts, which spreads across the expanses of our country, this has necessitated that almost the entire Ranger Corps have actually been converted into anti-poaching units. You know that their tasks are actually to deal with issues of conservation in particular, but they have been trained in anti-poaching units. They are well trained and supported by canine units, you know those, the small air wings and relevant technology, and tactical information management provided by the units at SANParks, our defense, and in particular here in this instance, the SSA, ensures the intelligent deployment of these units. This integrated multidisciplinary approach is also being implemented by the private rhino owners who have joined us inside South Africa, but also in Mozambique in particular. And given its size and the large number of rhino living in the Kruger National Park in particular, much of our efforts remain directed there. We are pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to announce that there has been a decrease in poaching incidents in the Kruger National Park, and this is due to our sustained effective law enforcement efforts. The threat of poaching is now a challenge to other provinces. As you know, that as we deal with the poachers in one area like the Kruger National Park, they're now moving to other areas, particularly in the KwaZulu-Natal. The eNCA KZN Wildlife has begun strengthening its response capacity as an anti-poaching unit in line with the existing Mission Area Joint Operations Center. That's a MAJOC, which you know we have actually opened, where we are also led by the defense and the security cluster operating inside the Kruger National Park. Now, as part of a plan, they are now in the process of setting up an intensive protection zone, which IPZ, you recall, ladies and gentlemen, that we had set up in the Kruger National Park themselves to ensure priority allocation of resources to where it matters most, because we have to be focused. And in the area of KwaZulu-Natal, that's what is happening right now. Based on the success, we actually registered in the implementation of the zoning concept in the KNP. This concept is also being rolled out in other provinces over and above KwaZulu-Natal. And that goes in accordance with the specific requirements and circumstances, because it's not in every province where would, for instance, do the IPZ. In others, it's just the normal zoning. With regards to arrest, in the reporting period, a total of 359 alleged poachers and traffickers have been arrested nationally. And the number of arrests inside the Kruger National Park totaled 90 alleged poachers, with 112 arrested adjacent to the Kruger National Park. What this actually signifies is that there is beginning to be a pushback from inside the Kruger National Park itself, because people are now being arrested adjacent to the park even before they can get in. This actually also tells us that the number of incidences inside the Kruger National Park has now decreased, with those who are moving in to attempt now decreasing in the park itself. And these are through the efforts that we believe have actually begun making this, giving us the successes. Investigations and prosecutions, we are acutely aware, ladies and gentlemen, that in order to make a real impact in the rhino poaching, these arrests must actually translate into successful investigations and prosecutions. We're happy to report that Skukuza Regional Court has been sitting since March 2017, and it is now fully functional with a number of successful prosecutions. Unfortunately, our minister cannot be with us here today from Justice and Correctional Services. He has just arrived from abroad, and another minister, by the way, is responsible for SAPS, who are supposed to be here, are not able to join us today. They are held up, he's held up somewhere. But indeed, as we record the success of the Skukuza, we recognize the efforts by that particular team, or those particular teams as well. The Stock Theft and Endangered Species Unit continues to play an instrumental role in ensuring rhino poaching cases are brought to trial. And the unit's track record this year so far has been noteworthy. And since January, 15 cases have been recently finalized in court and resulted in the convictions, where 22 perpetrators were sentenced to a total of 95 years imprisonment. It is anticipated that the new regional court at Skukuza will address the remaining cases. May I at this point check if the statement has been circulated? I think we should circulate it, please, so that we don't have many questions. They must just deal with their thoughts and line of thinking in the meantime. Thank you very much. Whilst it's circulated, let me continue. We were still on the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigations, that is also known as Hawks, working in close cooperation with the other government departments. Have also done sterling work, we recognize. And since January 2017, the Hawks have made arrests and seizures in 9 cases involving rhino horn traffickers, involving 13 suspects and approximately 140 kilograms of rhino horn. The coordinated efforts between DPCI, the South African Revenue Services, Customs in particular, supported by the Environmental Management Inspectorate, which are known as the Green Scorpions, are actually beginning to result in the dismantling the traffic networks. Certainly, as we said before, this can't happen without information from SSA as well. In the period under review, a number of rhino poaching related offences went on trial. And the following are the highlights of some of the successful convictions against poachers and traffickers. The Sihlangu case was finalized on the 26th of June 2017 with charges that included trespassing and possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition. The sentence was 17 years imprisonment. We're putting this deliberately here for us to understand that even for this charge, which we have not been getting these heavy sentences, now it's 17 years for a charge like this one. Ngoveni finalized in 15 June 2017. The charges included trespassing and conspiracy to commit rhino poaching, not yet killed or any rhino, but the sentence is 8 years imprisonment. Ndlovu finalized on the 30th of June 2017. Charges included trespassing, possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition, and illegal immigration. The sentence was 19 years effectively. And Nyanombe and Timana cases finalized on the 30th June 2017. Charges included trespassing, the possession of unlicensed firearm and ammunition, and illegal immigration. The sentence was 14 years imprisonment. These are just but a few success stories that we have registered. And yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, media and the entire South Africa can actually look in the media statement that we'll be posting on the website that actually talks to other cases that we have also recorded, should you actually require additional information. We now come into technological innovation. As you know, this is one aspect where have been doing work on. Although the campaign is far from one in the Kruger National Park and elsewhere, we are beginning to reap the benefits of our anti-poaching endeavors that is supported by so many of our people throughout the country, and we must thank them as well as the private parties. We continue to look into the employment of new technological interventions, with the latest breakthrough being our own homegrown mobile radar system, which has the ability to cover hundreds of square kilometers to ensure early warning and assist with the night engagements of poacher groups. With regards to port of entry and exit, the EMI, that is now the Inspectorate, also known as the Green Scorpions, continue their collaboration with other government agencies such as SARS, customs officials, in order to combat illegal import and export of wildlife products. We did report that we have placed some of these inspectorate and inspectors at the ports of entry, not yet at all our ports of entry, but yes, they are there supporting the other staff or from other departments that are working there. Obviously, from a point of view that they have been trained differently to look at these environmental crimes. There has been a marked increase globally during 2017 in the number of rhino horn detections and seizures at the ports of entry and exit. As indicated previously, since the beginning of this year, there have been several detections at OR Tambo International Airport. The South African National Defence Force, border officials, and airline handling teams are continuing to be trained by the Department of Environmental Affairs, particularly not in their being defense, obviously, but just to look at the aspects of environmental crimes, because those who are EMIs know better exactly what to look out for. And that is as part of our efforts to build capacity to tackle the illicit transboundary movement of endangered species. Now, in February this year, the Department of Environmental Affairs, together with SARS, Customs, took part in the Interpol's global Operation Thunderbird that involves police, customs, border agencies, environment, and wildlife officials from 43 countries. During that week-long operation in South Africa, 30 aircrafts, 1,657 vehicles, that includes buses and trucks, 1,857 pieces of luggage, and 632 people were actually searched. A total of 480 shipping containers were opened and inspected. The searches assisted in ensuring that our efforts are more visible and yielding results as indicated earlier. For these great efforts and success, we want to thank our entire team at SAPS. We could not have been here today if they had actually not been so vicious and vigorous. In other words, everybody who's here is really doing their part. We want to thank them. South Africa has also formally requested DNA samples from illegal traded horn confiscated in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, in Swaziland, in Namibia, as well as in Mozambique and the Netherlands. This is a new entry, you see, Netherlands, which we actually never had. People are beginning to use now different routes now. These samples assist in linking such seizures to poaching incidents, providing important information to assist with further investigations. The seizure activities were successfully employed in a cross-border investigation between Swaziland and South Africa, where obviously the defense force is there as well, and following the seizure of a consignment of rhino horn at O.R. Tambo International Airport in 2017. The seized horn was in transit to Swaziland and to Hong Kong, destined for Hong Kong, to Hong Kong. And 3 similar suitcases had been seized in Swaziland the previous day, and 2 couriers were arrested by the Royal Swazi Police. A total of 34.96 kilograms of rhino horn were seized between our 2 countries. This actually shows very good working relationship between the 2 countries and better coordination as well. The rhino DNA matching, which was done through the VGL RODIS system, indicated that the rhino horns discovered at the O.R. Tambo in Swaziland were linked to a rhino poached incident at the Balule Game Reserve in Hoedspruit in January 2017, as well as a rhino poaching incident in the Northwest Province and KZN. Now, coordination of these investigations continued between the Royal Swaziland Police and the Hawks, and the trial in Swaziland High Court has actually commenced now as we speak in June. And such successes are indicative of the growing cooperation within the SADC region itself to combat rhino poaching, which should be celebrated indeed. Regarding the managing of rhino populations in translocation, we would like to report that SANParks initiated a process, as we have reported before, in 2014, and the initial phase was completed during May 2017 with financial assistance from the Peace Park Foundation. Would like to thank. And Dr. Ferreira, I think we have actually translocated already over 120 to different parts of the country and the continent in particular since the program started. And the results of guidance for the future establishment of strongholds in the Kruger National Park and other rhino range states if poaching pressure reduces. We are excited at this prospect as it provides opportunities to establish stronghold with local communities as key partners. Biological management, we would like to report that since 1990, the translocation of rhino to smaller farms and reserves has actually resulted in the rhino population growing faster than they would have been the case had they remained in the Kruger National Park. And by the end of 2016, the gains made as a result of these translocations offset are about 25% of the rhino lost in the Kruger National Park during the 2016 calendar year. We would like to thank the Department of Transport for ensuring that the translocation rhinos are treated with care and that a waiver has actually been applied to ensure that the animals do not languish in borders queues to stop at weigh bridges, both of which alleviate their stress levels. SANPark has actually visited the established strongholds and assessed progress. And for the most part, all rhino were doing well and have established well in their new environments. It should be mentioned, however, that one facility experienced only an aggressive poaching onslaught and lost 15 rhinos out of 35, some of which originated from the Kruger National Park. And that, I think, it's in the Northern Cape, in the Free State. SANParks and the owners are now working together to find an alternative stronghold using the same criteria, and the owners of various other facilities. Unfortunately, this year we have not been able to translocate any rhinos. Rhino offense, our protection program supported by the Peace Park Foundation continues to support orphanage which provides care for young rhino calves whose mothers have actually been poached. I asked whether the fathers matter at this point in time. I was told no, it's the mothers who have been poached. If they remain with fathers, I think they are lucky, but when the mothers go, they can't suck anywhere. So we now have several rhino orphanages around the country taking care of orphans. The intention remains to ultimately resettle these orphans as part of our family groups in the wild. Sunparks alone has rescued 4 orphans in 2017 and presently holds 44 of the rhino orphans at various facilities. The rhino guardian approach, which we have reported we are dealing with as well, as part of our intention and objective to increase the black rhino population, we have initiated a rhino guardian project in the Kruger National Park during the January 2017, with support again from the Peace Park Foundation and the WWF South Africa in particular, the branch of South Africa. Our approach includes a priority response to task teams when incursions occur that could threaten black rhino. We have dedicated biological management and science support that use innovative techniques to inform efficient protection by our field rangers. I now want to turn to the poaching statistics. That is a report from between January and June 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a slight increase in the number of rhino poached nationally. Sorry, a decrease. Did I say increase? Mm-hmm. Sorry. I'm very, very sorry. Let me say it again. There has been a slight decrease in the number of rhino poaching nationally. A total of 529 rhino have been poached since January 2017, as compared to 542 in the same period for 2016, representing a decrease of 13 rhinos. We are comparing same period last year with the same period this year. With regards to the Kruger National Park, where you know we actually had a traditionally bearing brand of poaching, a total of 243 rhino carcasses were found between January and the end of June, and this is compared to 354 in the same period in 2016. This represents a decrease of 34%. What does this story tell us? That with these measures that we are applying now in other provinces to even curb there will be a continued, and there's likely to be continued reduction, because we have decreased in the Kruger National Park. However, in some other provinces, there has been a decrease. But still with that, for this period, there is 13 less as compared to last year. As we have always stated, these declining numbers do not mean we can proclaim victory. Nevertheless, the downward trend is being established, which is a cause for cautious optimism. Whilst there has been a decrease in the number of rhino killed for their horn in the Kruger National Park and Mpumalanga, a number of rhino poached unfortunately increased in some other provinces, we said before. And it is a concern, and we report here today also that there has been some 30 elephants which were poached in the Kruger National Park. The interventions that we are now embarking upon or have been embarking upon dealing with the rhino are also implemented to counter the poaching against elephant. It is clear, ladies and gentlemen, that more resources are needed to address this challenge that we are experiencing in terms of both rhino and elephant poaching. Regarding the fourth pillar, which is the long-term sustainability, the proposed regulatory measures for the domestic trade in rhino horn. Related to that, ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, earlier this year, the Constitutional Court dismissed the application by the Minister of Environmental Affairs for leave to appeal the High Court decision to set aside the moratorium on the domestic trade in rhino horn. We have developed a set of draft regulatory measures focusing primarily on the domestic trade, but also including specific provisions relating to the export of rhino for non-commercial purposes. Just be mindful of the fact that we are talking about trade locally, domestically, but export controlled ones for non-commercial purposes, such as a personal use, for hunting trophies, research or education, and training as provided for by the convention, that is a CITES. That is now at international level. It's just export. Under those controlled measures, it's for those purposes only. These were published regulations for public comments in February this year, and all inputs are being considered as part of the current approval process. It is important to underscore, ladies and gentlemen, two issues of great importance, because from time to time, media reports arise which serve to create sometimes some confusion, or maybe we create confusion in the manner in which we put it, we don't know. But we thought that it's important to clarify that today, that firstly, in order to be in possession of a rhino horn, you need a permit. That's the possession. This is in terms of the National Environmental Management Act, that's NEMBA, as well as applicable provincial conservation legislation. For the legal export of rhino horn, the requirements will be, amongst others, that's export, it's not trade. Export for those purposes that we have just referred to earlier on. The horn must have been subjected to DNA profiling. The horn must be marked by means of microchip and a ZA serial number as prescribed in the TOPS regulation. The information of the owner of a horn and information relating to the marking of a rhino horn must have been recorded in the national database. That is the register that we are currently finalizing. A CITES export permit, which also needs to make provision for the export as a threatened or protected species specimen, that has to be endorsed at the port of exit prior to exportation. Now, to facilitate the national coordination of permits for the domestic trade in the horn, we will be issuing, the Minister of Environmental Affairs will be the issuing authority for permit applications relating to the selling or buying of a rhino horn within the borders of the country. However, this arrangement also is dependent on the written agreement of the MECs responsible for conservation biodiversity. In all 9 provinces, you know that this is actually a concurrent function. Secondly, and this cannot be emphasized enough, ladies and gentlemen, the commercial international trade in rhino horn remains strictly prohibited in terms of CITES. That is correct, ladies and gentlemen. Prohibited, we say. South Africa is a signatory to CITES. The aforementioned draft regulations published for public comment relate to a proposed domestic trade. And domestically, it will be trade. Internationally, it's export. We want to emphasize that. And we sincerely hope that our reporting to you today will actually do service to the readership and listenership and emphasize this distinction so that we do not sow this confusion that we may probably have also been part of causing. The Department's Environmental Inspectorate, as EMI, as well as those of conservation departments, will continue to monitor compliance with the relevant regulations that are as required. The next reporting issue is under communities, ladies and gentlemen. We have repeatedly emphasized that bringing local communities into the mainstream of conservation is very central to anti-poaching strategy. In our communities and rural communities in particular, there must be real and tangible stake in the natural resource sector, and we'll be able to remove the incentive to become involved in the activities of crime in several ways. It is communities who suffer the most from the increased insecurity that results when there is poaching-related activities in the vicinity. The Rhino Lab has therefore identified 5 key interventions that will be instrumental in addressing the underlying concern in the communities. And the key ones are listed there. The activities relate to, I'm not going to go through them in detail, but to improve governance via community facilitators, which will actually ensure local governance model for communities. The second one is ensuring that we deal with involving communities to become part and parcel of the policing security. That's about whistleblowing and so on, bringing information to the authorities. The third one, it relates to enhancement of community ranger model with a national carrier and a rollout plan That's very clear. That has also been identified, worked on a plan up to 3 feet level. So all these have plans underneath each pillar or each area of work, which will actually lead up to 3 feet plans and implementation. The next area is to conduct stock takes on existing economic community empowerment programs, because we need to ensure that we count them and we actually record what has happened and how much we have been able to go through, and develop a rollout of broad restorative justice program with SAPS and other partners, as well as launching a community empowerment plan and identifying champions. Facilitating increased economy, ladies and gentlemen, economic participation for communities is in line with our government biodiversity economy strategy that we spoke about earlier. And the overall aim there is, amongst others, to ensure that we deal with the donation of 625 heads of game in the new emerging farmers, and that has to be done, and we're targeting 300,000 head of game by 2030 that must be given, donated to these individuals. A study visit that has been arranged for 46 emerging farmers from community property associations has already begun to learn about the biodiversity model. These 3, rhino ambassadors as well being the third, are actually the quick wins and the quick deliverables that have been identified from the labs. With regards to international and regional cooperation, you know that we have signed Memorandum of Understanding with Vietnam, China, Laos, Cambodia, Mozambique, and Kenya. And those MOUs have assisted us to improve international and regional collaboration. With regards to Vietnam, the awareness projects in Vietnam are gaining traction, and these are directed at youth, business community, and are spearheaded by governments and NGOs. And these projects include a partnership with the university in Shanghai in particular, and we are also developing solutions to address consumer behavior and demand management related to illegal run. During 2017, the Hawks and SAPS and the Department of met the Ministry of Public Security to discuss better coordination between our country and the Vietnamese law enforcement. Mozambique continue to register progress in terms of the MOU, and this progress, amongst others, relate to the things that are in the statement, which I'm not going to go through all of them. Progress that has been attained today is incorporation of the Greater Limpopo Conservancy, and also the issue of translocation of wildlife from the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park in order for us to actually reinforce tourism development. We have translocated animals there. The realignment of the borders of Banhine National Park, and the initiation of a process to demarcation and protection of wildlife corridors, the development of the TFCA, a sustainable livelihood strategy. One of them was actually being celebrated last week in Mozambique together with the Mozambican government. The resettlement of 3 villages that we reported earlier on, and a further 4 in the process of being moved out of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. The finalization of our government of Mozambique with new legislation to assist the prosecution for wildlife crime. As you know, that the legislation there was not quite strong. They now have introduction of harsher penalties for alleged poachers and traffickers. Outside these MOUs, South Africa continues its collaboration with the international law enforcement networks, and we continue to engage, in particular through the IQUIC, as you know, is a body under the CITES. And the department also has other law enforcement of government working together. We currently are sitting on the Interpol, and the Interpol offices also participated in the regional Interpol Environment Crime Workshop, which was held in Tanzania, intended to better manage the crime levels, or even movement of some of our horns and other species elsewhere. We also participated in the regional investigative and analytical case meeting of rhino horn trafficking, which was hosted by the Hawks and Interpol National Central Bureau in June 2017. And this was attended by the Chinese, Malaysia, Mozambique, Swaziland, and South Africa. and is aimed at improving law enforcement, as I said. The Hawks has also been strengthened their priority actions through engagement with international agencies, partnering with Asset Recovery Interagency Network South Africa, the Wildlife Interregional Enforcement, and the group and the Rhino Elephant Security Group meeting that was hosted in South Africa in January 2017. All these efforts are intended to better strengthen our law enforcement agency initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we would like to indicate that it is indeed important to state that as government, we remain committed to providing regular updates on the state of rhino poaching in South Africa. Without this information, the media would not be able to perform your task of keeping the public informed. But do keep the public informed, because we are reporting to South Africans as a whole. And rhino poaching is a national priority crime, and we continue to pursue a number of strategies to tackle this problem, working with vigor and determination and as a collective, because none of us as a single department can make any breakthrough. Through poaching, ladies and gentlemen, rhino poaching is indeed a national national priority crime. As we indicated earlier, we are not claiming victory, but we should celebrate success even when they are small, because that can only encourage us. From what you see here today, we are saying there is indeed a trend that has been established of a downward movement. Just in the Kruger National Park, close to about 100 less. It's actually quite good. This also serves to motivate our citizens from all sectors, be they the NGO community, business community, civil society, and most of all, our ranger corps, our police, our law enforcement agencies, and would like to believe that together we can still do more. We would like to once again remind the public to be vigilant and report suspicious activities that are relating to rhino poaching and wildlife crime in general to the relevant provincial and national authorities. It is only through working together as a collective that we'll be able to put an end to rhino poaching. Would like to thank you, and I think my colleagues are here to either make more inputs or respond to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to acknowledge as well from Pretoria, the DDG responsible for biodiversity and conservation, Mr. Shoni Munzezi, Major General Johan Jooste from St. Parks, but also at the frontier, DDG responsible for legal authorization, compliance and enforcement in the department, Mr. Ishama Bada, just to the next Minister of State Security, and to the extreme left, Dr. Sam Ferreira from St. Parks as well. Ladies and gentlemen, further in questions, comments, compliments? The good news Minister has just shared, of course, there's still a long way to go, but of course, we think that our efforts collaboratively with a whole range of agencies within government and outside of government are looking to yield dividends. Starting in Cape Town, and I'll allow Pretoria, there are 10 from the front. Paul?
Good morning, Ministers. Paul Bekioto from Bloomberg. Just quickly, when will the Minister of Police approve the draft national integrated strategy to combat wildlife trade?
Thank you.
I think my question is to everybody, I suppose. Wendell from Reuters. Towards the end of last year, Cabinet, I think it was in November, Cabinet issued a statement in relation to the allegations involving the Intelligence Minister, Molewa, and the allegations of his involvement in the rhino poaching syndicate. If you could please give us an update as to what the investigation has said, and what is the latest with that regard. And the next question relates to the Defence Minister, please, Minister Masidwe. Minister, there has been lots of talk from yourself and other members of the security cluster about the possibility of regime change in South Africa. Now, there seems to be lots of, particularly ex-US military veterans working to fight poaching, rhino poaching in South Africa. And I saw one statement where they alleging hundreds of these ex-combatants are working to fight poaching. I'm just trying to find out, is that a concern that ex-combatants from the US particularly are working to fight crime? Are you guys worried about that? And how does the broader scope of things? Thank you.
Don Pinnock, Minister, there is very little value to rhino horn inside South Africa, massive value outside. And our borders are very leaky. How are you going to ensure that rhino farmers are not going to sell their horn to people who are going to export it out of the country? The second question is the South African government going to put forward a position at COP18, I think, to downlist rhino horn or make it tradable internationally? Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Those were the questions from Cape Town. I think I would recommend we deal with the ministers before we go to Pretoria.
Do you want to start, Minister? Sorry, let me do this. Will they work like this? Okay.
Yeah, they will. Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. The matter of the integrated security strategy is not a strategy which is focusing purely on the poaching of wildlife, but rather an integrated security strategy which deals with the entire security issues relevant to the state. This matter is currently underway within the security cluster. Very soon we'll be convening what is called an anti-crime summit, where we will then be consolidating and finalizing all of the inputs from various stakeholders about how best we should be dealing with these issues. We're planning to have this anti-crime summit sometime in August. Minister Mahlobo, I think
Yes.
it's in August.
It was
You'll be informed about the date. So I cannot speak for the Minister of Police and commit that on such and such a date we'll be able to publish the strategy, but rather that it's better for us to go to the summit first, get inputs from various stakeholders, and once we've done that, then we can publish the strategy. On the matter of Minister allegations against Minister Mahlobo, I'm sure you're all aware, Paul, that the men who made the allegations quickly disappeared, which made it very difficult for the law enforcement agencies to investigate this matter. You'll recall that at that time, Minister Mahlobo had quickly responded by saying he is ready to subject himself to a full investigation of this matter. However, the men made the allegations and disappeared. And that is the reason why we've not as yet heard about progress relevant to that matter. There is no way in which we can investigate the matter, not unless the man who made the allegations make himself available to make a statement, and then we can take it from there. So if you ask me, no investigation has been conducted precisely because of that. I think I'll leave the other questions to
Thank
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister, for those responses. Just to add on the issue of strategy, you recall that this strategy actually arose at the discussions from the lab that was convened. And the lab had actually had fewer participants as opposed to the entire bigger group of the cluster itself. It is for that reason that the minister and in the cluster found it necessary also to expand this consultation to broader participation in the country, so that once it comes out and is completed as a strategy fully, there would have been participants, nobody who actually matters would have been left behind. With regards to additions to the allegations against Minister Molewa, I made comments, I'm sure all of us would recall at the time, and I was not in the country when this matter was spoken about. One of the things that we had from the Department of Environmental Affairs was an allegation that Minister Molewa was blocking some technology innovation that was to be introduced by the department that is now a surveillance technology. I responded, and I still remind South Africans, that at the time when we were evaluating that technology together with SSA, this minister called Minister Molewa was not even a minister in that department. So any allegation that was saying that he was blocking that technology, I think even if a man would have availed himself, this was already, from our side, a non-issue really, because allegation is made that it's him who's blocking and he's not even the minister in the department. I also made the second comment that actually said that it is important for South Africans to remember that the person who's making these allegations is actually from a company that was requested to leave the area Kruger National Park using the technology that they were doing because of certain things that were detected at the time. I did say that it is important that we do not talk about the details of those, but we have asked them to no longer, the board had actually terminated their contract. There were two role players in South Africa company. One was from international partner, and one was South African. The South African one, at that very same time, came out to actually distance themselves from those allegations that were made, saying that they are actually incorrect. So from those two fronts alone, ourselves from the Department of Environmental Affairs were going to be advancing with this information had the investigation open. So for us, it was really an issue that was quite amazing how it emerges, even at the time when the minister was not even a minister. So I thought I should add those two elements. Minister, I'm not sure if you dealt with the possibility of a regime change, combat fighting. I'm not. Oh, Minister will talk about that. Just the last issue, the value of a horn. How are we going to ensure that South Africans do not farmers sell? In the statement somewhere, we are referring to a list of very tight measures which are going to have to be complied with if a horn was to be taken out. I have read them out to us here this morning. I can't remember where they are, but to us these are quite strict measures that we have put in place. Anything else that may occur or may cause the horn from South Africa to be exported elsewhere or to be exported elsewhere would be illegal. And that illegality is a matter that we're actually now is reinforcing our capacity to work with Interpol, to work with IQIC, to work with everybody on an international level to even detect. By the way, remember that every horn that we will be having as traded nationally will have to be marked profiling, will have to be microchipped. So anything that goes out or that will be intended to go, will plan to go out, we'll be knowing where they are. We may actually not say some of the things there, but we'll be monitoring strictly, even where they are, whether they are moving out or in or staying the same. Because there will all obviously be continued auditing of those horns. There must also be information of rhino owner relating to the marking and as well as recording on the national database. And that database, we are developing it for the sake of monitoring every year and from periodically as and when we need. Like right now, we're doing audit of all the government stockpiles on a continuous basis because we've finished databasing, banking, as well as microchipping and serial numbers. So anything that goes out may be illegal, yes, but we will obviously deal with those issues from illegality point of view, as we are dealing with illegal things. The next issue about the COP, whether we'll put a proposal, we have indicated that Cabinet did say we are not ready, we were not ready. There are many other things that still need to be done. So CITES happening every second year. At the time when we're nearing CITES, we'll obviously look at whether the state of readiness is okay now or not. We are working round the clock with the private owners and other people to see if the state of readiness can, but we'd like to believe that indeed if we are ready, we may, but if we are not, right, we will obviously not take it up to this point. We'll comply with what Cabinet said first, that we need to ensure that we do. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Molewa and Minister Machisangalu. With respect to the issue around the ex-military combatants who are being used in the parks, we don't want you to slant into a position to say they are being used for regime change. That would actually be far-fetched. In terms of our approach as government, you know that we are dealing with the question of an insider threat. Whether you work for the entity itself, whether we are an employee, whether we are in private security, including in our own situation, whether the government agencies that are there. It depends in which organization they've chosen whether to use private security or not. As long as they do their job within the ambit of the law, they don't do espionage, they actually there to curb wildlife security, including rhino poaching. That's not an issue to us. But the most important issue, the joint operations we do and the integrity of all the entities that are working there, everyone who works there. And we've insisted to our agencies that we vet people that are working there because of the insider threat. I think that's how should we actually be able to do that, rather than to actually send an impression that government has an intention to actually outlaw the use of private security in our parks. They are used. They have just actually to respect the laws of the land. And if one of them, whether is part of the ranger corps or whatever, whether working in the security agencies, they are involved in terms of rhino poaching or selling of information or collaboration with other entities, we should be able to deal with that. I think that other issue about allegation on the minister, I think the ministers have clarified you, Paul. And please check your facts. The Minister of State Security is a complainant on that case. Himself is actually waiting for progress on the matter, despite the challenges that are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ministers. Pretoria, do we have any questions? Xalena?
Yes, we do. Thank you again. Good morning, Ms. Colleagues in Cape Town. I will take questions. First one from Peter.
Peter Grants with NPR National Public Radio. Minister Molewa, have any permits been issued for the potential online sale next month that John Hume is looking to have for during his auction? And since it's anonymous, are you confident, or how can you be confident that none of those horns will leave the country, illegally or legally? And unrelated, how big is the government stockpile of rhino horn? Thanks.
I beg your pardon, that last question I didn't hear. Stockpile.
Thank you, Mr. Watson from the Citizen. Just to come back to Mr. Molewa's manicurist, do we know anything about this man? He's been running a brothel that the minister was frequenting, where he was getting his nails done. He's came into the country legally, he's left the country illegally, ingratiated himself with the minister. So how has it been known nothing about this guy? There must be something you can tell us about him. And how is, and the follow-up to that is it not worrying that someone this high up in rhino poaching or rhino trafficking Tier 3 can get this close to a minister, especially the Minister of State Security?
Alex.
Yes. Alexander from Dutch Minister. What you all said here is your main task is to stop any export of rhino horn from South Africa, even for private use. Terms and conditions you said are very strict. It is impossible for a foreign state to arrive in South Africa, buy a horn, pay the farmer, and take it out. It's impossible because of all those conditions. The international ban on rhino horn has been enforced for over 40 years and it does not work. Every year, over 1,000 of rhinos are poached in South Africa. And it will be the same this year, according to your statistics. So, all that huge effort, which all of your three ministries are taking, does not yield effect. So why are you so against allowing rhino horn without all those strict conditions? Because any prohibition, it results in mafia, like it happened in the United States with prohibition on alcohol. So you have strong crime syndicates, which you are trying to fight, but they're still taking over you. So why aren't you ready to propose to have that moratorium international with, because you are the country which has 80% of rhinos in the world, so you have to take the lead. Thank you. And another question, are you going to build a fence along the border with Mozambique into the national park? Or maybe a wall, it's now very fashionable to build walls.
We will just take the last one from here. If we get another chance later, we'll give you more time. Johnny.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Johnny Sai. I'm with African News Agency in Pretoria. Just to inquire from the Minister, please, on the issue of our elephants, could you just kind of tell us how has been the trend in previous years? You said that the elephants shows been poached, but how has been the trend? Is it a new trend or they've always been under this scale? Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Over to you,
Thank you. Pretoria, Ministers.
Could I ask Dr. Ferreira to start first, and Isham will deal with the other question. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, everybody. With regards to the question on the trends of elephants, yes, the poaching of elephants has increased in Kruger National Park, and this is a great concern for us. However, in some recent work, which came out last year, globally on the continent, the African elephants are busy decreasing. South Africa is one of the exceptions where our elephant populations are still increasing substantially. So we are taking this particular pattern of increasing of elephant poaching quite seriously, and will transform or use the lessons that we've learned with rhino poaching to try and combat this particular case. Thanks.
What was the number last year, by the way?
I'm not sure what the number of elephants were last year. I think General Juster or Nicholas may have that directly.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this?
It was 46.
Thanks, madam.
Just on the issue of the permitting, we are in the process of assessing the permits. We haven't yet issued any permits, so we've received an application, but we are in the process of assessing those permit applications, so none have been issued as yet.
Okay. Thank you very much. No permit has been issued yet. I thought you'd also say that we do not have anything called the online sale because of the need to even register buyers, the other side, which you can't quite do when somebody markets online. Even before a determination would have been made by authorities on both countries that indeed this is a person who is known and we can confirm, because we have to have that information. So you cannot do even an online as we hear about that online marketing is being done, we have issued a statement in this regard to indicate that as far as we are concerned, for now there isn't any sale. Not that we are against, but everything, by the way, remember, has got to be done by the rule book. There has to be compliance with all the regulations that we have set. Specifically just to ensure that there isn't any creeping of illegality that happens because of some loopholes in our system. So we'll keep the system tight. But at the same time, we have said that for personal use, for research, for awareness, campaigns, and so forth, the international export will still happen, and that will also do in accordance to the regulations. Now, these are aspects that have to do with the regulated area. Aspects that has to do with the illegal area are dealt with within the law and the enforcement in particular. And, well, we must be able to deal with those, with the new measures that we have actually introduced now, working strongly with Interpol and with IQUIC, with all the workshops that we referred to, law enforcement mechanisms that we referred to in our statement, that we have actually continued to embark upon. That's not the end. We'll continue to look for other measures that helps us to deal with illegality, the illegal aspects of this matter. I just want to come back to the matter related to Minister Molewa, the allegations that were made. How come do we not know about this person? I did say that this person was actually part of a company that was doing work in the Kruger National Park of technology. And this was a partner, an international partner to a South African partner. A South African partner who said, we actually distance ourselves from the allegations that have been made. It's important to note that. The person has moved out. We don't even know. He's vanished. I don't know whether we should be saying we know something about where we have gone, as it sounds like the statements or the questions are actually saying. What is important is that if a man comes here and make allegations, we look for him. We actually even found loopholes already in what he's saying. And a South African company says we distance ourselves from that. I'm not sure what else should be done, as perhaps some of the following questions are actually being posed. For as far as we are concerned, this man has made his allegations vanished. We have detected loopholes in his statements. And even if he comes back tomorrow or we find him, we'll still pose these questions that we are posing. We'll still continue to investigate this matter. Now, it is important to note something that, and I mentioned this part when I was still abroad when this matter happened. I'm not defending Minister Molewa, but the truth is the truth. The allegations were around the time when Minister Molewa, what were you? HOD in the Department of... not even a minister, not even at national level. HOD of the Department of Kokta, I think, in Mpumalanga, many years ago. One of the things that surprised us is that this allegation surfaces when Minister Molewa is a minister of state security. It says he has blocked technology as a minister, and yet he was not a minister. This allegation has stayed down dead for as long as it had actually happened, many years ago. It comes when he's minister, and it makes suggestions that it does. So there are a lot to be answered, questions that must be answered. Why now? That's a question I asked. Why a matter that happened, it must have been something like 7 or 8 years, 9 years ago. Now the allegation is made because he's Minister of State Security. So I think South Africans, let's ask ourselves the right questions before we are made to think differently about some of the things. Let's ask ourselves, why now? Get a response from this man. Why does he make an allegation about somebody and say that he has blocked technology, when in fact he was not even here to block any technology? He was somewhere else at the time. Why those kinds of statements that are quite strange, not revealing the truth? So I really think that we've got to be very, very careful in what we think. Well, for us, this matter has got some tentacles that we don't quite understand. Anyway, the ban that we have placed, and it was a moratorium that upon the court judgment has actually been lifted. It's not the department that has lifted it up. It's a court judgment. Through the court judgment, the moratorium has been lifted. It is for that reason that we, by the way, let me also say that at the time when the moratorium was placed, in 2008 or 2009, the system was not as tight as it was. And I think this is why the previous minister actually put this moratorium, placed this moratorium, to be able to clean up the system. We now have regulations. We now have taken the stockpiles. By the way, the stockpile is now very ready. We have done government stockpiles, 9 provinces, all audited, confirmed, and data-based. We have data of that, 9 provinces. 2 provinces already completed as well from private sector 1. 4 is 2 plus 6 is 8. 6 provinces, provincial authorities have already done the audit. We are now verifying as a state, because we have to verify even after the provincial government have done that. 1 province is where we are still, we have actually begun doing the verification, the audit as well. They are still doing, which is the last remaining province. So by the time we finish, we shall have actually dealt with stockpiles throughout the country and databasing and data bank of it, microchipping and all that goes with it. So yes, now the measures are in place. We do think that these measures can allow us to actually curb the rhino horn, illegal trade. But we did make a point that Cabinet has said to us that go and do certain things, which we spoke about. One of them is to pass this national strategy and actually implement it. When all those things are in place, when we have done the data bank and everything else, everything that Cabinet said we must do, when we have done that, only then will we go back to Cabinet and make a proposal to Cabinet how to approach. Remember, one of the things that we've got to do is also to work towards finding a partner on the side, or a potential partner, so that we don't open ourselves up to everybody elsewhere. So this thing has got to be so tightly managed that we know that trade is trade. It's been done with whoever and with a particular country. Yes, I think these measures will be applied. I'm here talking to a gentleman who was strongly talking about why do we restrict and why do we ban. We really want to ensure that we have done all that Cabinet says we should do, even before we approach the CITES. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last gentleman from Pretoria raised a matter relevant to a fence between Mozambique and South Africa. But I didn't quite hear what the question was. Will you please
put it up?
Question?
Now the question is that there used to be a fence between Mozambique and South Africa in Kruger Park. And there were plans, and even Minister Molewa said that because of the wave of poaching from Mozambique, that fence may be restored. So my question is, will it be restored or not? Or will it be a single park and poachers from Mozambique will continue streaming into South Africa and killing the rhinos? That's my question. Thank you.
Yes, the fence will be restored. And I'm sure you are aware that there is an interministerial task team which has been established by the President, chaired by the Minister of Defense, dealing with that particular issue. And I'm sure you are also aware that there have been several visits which have been conducted by the Minister, but also supported by the officials from the various government departments. There's also a move to interact with the ministers from Mozambique to discuss some of the challenges, particularly as they relate to the border line between Mozambique and South Africa in the area of Mhlabuyalingana. And may I also mention that, yes, you are aware that there were several discussions held before. The then President of Mozambique, where a decision was taken that we should do away with the high fence, but also decisions taken by government itself at the time here in South Africa that we don't need an electrical fence, we don't need a fence that may actually harm the citizens of the Republic of South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, etc., etc. However, the situation has changed quite significantly. I don't think at the time when such decisions were taken, they had anticipated that we would have the kinds of challenges which we have now, e.g. that of rhino poaching, of general poaching of our wildlife. So, but also challenges of illegal migration by the citizens of various countries. So obviously now, situation having changed, there is a reconsideration and a review of some of the decisions which were taken at the time. Obviously, it does not mean that we want an electrical fence. We don't want that. Remember, the electrical fence at the time had been put up because there were so-called terrorists. People were fighting for the liberation of South Africa at the time. Now you don't have such. So obviously, much as we are talking about issues of illegal migration, we have to be very careful how we put up security systems to secure ourselves as a country. These should not be harmful to people who are wanting to come into South Africa, but should rather serve as an early warning system to those who are responsible for border control and border management. And just to say that you are also aware of the fact that we've now passed the law which paves the way for an establishment of the Border Management Authority. And hopefully soon that will be promulgated, which will then allow for us to establish this authority, which will allow for a better coordination and collaboration amongst government departments on matters of border security. So even that fence we are referring to, it could be that we'll end up using technology, we'll end up having drones, for instance. We don't know. But there's a whole lot of work being done by our officials, which will then inform us about the kind of security we need on the borderline. Fencing, that will probably not solve all of your problems. Lastly, just to say that we all are aware that we have a very long borderline. And therefore, even as you talk about fencing, how far do you go with that? In those areas where you have a river, for instance, where you may not be able to put up a fence, what do you do? So we're looking at various initiatives. We're looking at various options which are on the table, which are presented by the officials about what exactly to do to ensure that we have tight border control in the Republic of South Africa, which will be then in support of the members of the South African National Defence Force who are patrolling the borderline. Thank you.
Can I just add something? Could I just add something to the two stakeholders that may be listening? The inner part of South Africa, where there's a fence, it's supposed to also stay strong, managed at all times for purpose of those who are in agriculture, disease control and all that goes with it. So that will remain and intact and also enforced to ensure that we don't get diseases from inside the park. To the second stakeholder that's related to the conservationists, will know that where we have lowered the fences to create the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, that area is the area where we are referring to the villages, because the fences were lowered in between South Africa and those villages, where the villagers are being moved by Mozambique to outside the park, where they are being resettled. Mozambique will also put up a fence on their side to demarcate the residents from the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. So the Transfrontier Park will remain, but the fence on the inner side of Mozambique will be erected as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I'm ready to take the last two questions from Cape Town and last two from Pretoria. Got a candidate from the front here, and any other question from Cape Town? Only one. Thank you.
Good morning, Marianne Merton, Daily Maverick. Quick one to Minister Molewa. Could you give us the kilograms of the stockpile that has been government audited and verified? No numbers were mentioned. In terms of your community program, what are the rands and cents attached to that? What are you spending on the relocation and donation of heads of game? Have you put in place support officers to assist communities of new and emerging game farmers? And what are the plans to effectively transfer 299,000 heads of game in the next 13 years? How many jobs do you hope to create? Some of those figures around that. And then to Minister Mahlobo, please, a clarification, if you may. You've just said that it's absolutely okay for ex-US combatants to be part and parcel of the rhino, other anti-poaching activities, as long as they do so within the law. In your budget speech and subsequently, you insisted that it was not okay for private security, which are dominated by Western imperialist forces as their owners, to guard national key points. Could you perhaps clarify what are the criteria so it's okay for US ex-combatants to be part and parcel of what has been described as a national priority crime, but it's kind of not okay for private security in other places? Thank you.
Thank you. Pretoria, can we get the last one?
Good morning, Minister. Anton May from Pretoria. It's a simple question. Minister, can you just give us a provincial breakdown of the rhino poaching figures, please? We saw a decrease of 34% in the Kruger National Park, which means there must be an increase in some of the other provinces. I would just like to know which provinces saw the biggest increase in rhino poaching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not thanks. I think
there's just one more from Bonnie.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Bonnie Debart from Struer. Forgive me, it's been quite a while since the last press briefing, so I have 3 questions. My first question is about the attack on the Tula Rhino Orphanage 6 months ago in KwaZulu-Natal. Several members of staff were assaulted and one individual raped, and there doesn't seem to be much information available about this case. Are you able to give us an update, perhaps? My second question, Minister Molewa, there are several syndicate cases pending. How will the lifting of the moratorium impact those cases? And then my last question is a follow-up from the question in Cape Town. Minister Mahlobo, it was also reported that you had engaged a legal team to investigate defamation action against the international broadcaster. Are you still going ahead with that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister?
No, thank you very much. I think the issues around allegations, I'm not going to deal with them. I think the 2 ministers' issues are sufficiently covered. and we dealt with those issues. I'm not going to try to make this press briefing about those issues. Marianne, I think we probably not understanding each other. When the question was asked by Paul, I never heard him referring to US. Okay, if that's what the issue, they are military combatants from the Defence Force in South Africa. I was referring to that. Very important, because you know that a number of people that have left the service, they've chosen to continue their trade in terms of the skills they have. And one of the trade they are doing is private security. That's why I said you can't criminalize. I'm referring to our nationals in terms of doing their work. But if you are referring to private security that is foreign owned, our position as the state has not changed. That's why there is even a law that is currently on the table that needs to be assented to law, which is your SIRA Act, so that we are able to actually, one, transform, but also to regulate. Any self-respecting country should be able to put those particular initiatives. And we're on record, Mariana, that the private security industry has a space to play in our economy. It employs a lot of other people. But the concerns we have raised around foreign ownership, the issues of espionage, we should not be able to be detracted not to raise them. And every company that is there, like we're actually even speaking about the securing of national key points, we want to know who's there. What is your bona fide? That's why the issues of vetting is very important, of entities, including individuals that are working there. And we'll go ahead, the South African government, to actually transform the industry and actually deal with the question of foreign ownership, which is actually clear in the law, to say that the percentage, it must be mainly driven by South Africans. And like it happens in other countries, there are countries in terms of private security, is led by those citizens of those particular countries, not something that is unique. But if an impression was to say, I'm saying just allow unlimited foreign participation in securing our country, that's not the intention. But very clear, don't actually say that South Africans who have chosen to leave the service, they should not be able to participate in this, but we're going to promote it. Like we said, even in the ANC National Policy Conference, using our own is going to be the preoccupation of this government.
Just a quick follow-up. Minister Molewa, but then what is now that you clarified that you had not quite understood the question from my colleague, which was specifically on US ex-combatants being used in the rhino poaching initiatives. You've now clarified that you thought we were talking about ex-SANDF, ex-SADF members. Now, what is your statement about the use of foreign military combatants in the initiatives to fight rhino poaching, please? Thank you.
But we have responded to the question. We are not going to limit ourselves to one nationality, which is non-South African. You know that there is currently a law that has actually gone through our parliamentary processes to say transform the private security industry and reduce the ownership by foreigners. And you know the percentages, the copy of the law, I think, is readily available to see that. Irrespective of which nationality is, we are actually going to actually push ahead with the transformation of the industry, because our view remains that any self-respecting country in terms of national sovereignty, you should be in a position to actually curtail foreign ownership in terms of the leadership of private security. We will not want to try to be pigeonholed just to look at one nationality. It is not only be a combatant from the US, you have many from other countries that are here, which has actually established private security in terms of our own database that we have. Thank you.
So the Minister of Defense would like to come in, but before she does, I would like us to ask General Jooste to speak to this issue. Ex-combatants in the park.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Everybody. We have never utilized ex-combatants in the South African national parks, and if and when we get offers for help, for training or limited training, those are channeled through our South African Wildlife College. That if those members have such expertise, they must take it there and it will be customized. Whilst these people might be very experienced, we don't have any need for our rangers to be trained as sharpshooters or combat engineers. Anti-poaching has become a specialized type of operation, and we are mindful of the fact that we're dealing here with a national security matter. We have never utilized in the park, and we have been in informal contact only when advice is offered, and we have no intention to utilize Minister.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the response of Gerald Houston. But just to say that we will follow up on the matter which you have raised. Truth of the matter is a security cluster. We're not aware that there are retired U.S. ex-combatants who are responsible for this kind of work. The reason why we work as a cluster, it is to ensure that there is proper collaboration amongst ourselves as government departments, so that in the event you have instances of private security company or even retired military or ex-combatants coming in the guise of private security companies, we should have that information readily available at our disposal as this cluster. So I'm glad that you've raised the matter, because then it gives us an opportunity to scan that environment, see who is there, who is doing what, because obviously that should be a matter of concern to all of us as South Africans. It's not about them being ex-combatants from the US, but it is about military personnel, retired or not retired, coming into South Africa, doing that kind of work, well, coming in under the guise of doing that kind of work, but in fact would be your well-trained military personnel. I think that should create a problem. That should raise serious problems amongst us ourselves. In South Africa here, we do have retired military personnel. In fact, we've been directed ages ago to establish what is called your state-owned security agency, government-owned security agency. And that's where we'll see our military veterans, for instance, whether from the non-statutory forces or from the statutory forces, coming together and you form this kind of entity. We don't need people who are coming from other countries in South Africa doing that kind of work for us. I think worse for me if there's evidence that these are trained militarily. And therefore I would agree with the Minister of State Security that in this instance, obviously, we would have to do some, having scanned the environment, some vetting, so that we establish where these people are and what they are doing. And yeah, I think that this affords us that opportunity to do that work. And it shall be followed up, and hopefully when we next give this kind of report through Minister Molewa, we'll be able to answer this question and clarify whether in fact we do have such people or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Albie, I'm not channeling you, but I just thought that we should keep something in mind. We said in the statement that our ranger community has actually been trained to be able to, inside the park, deal with rhino poaching in particular and environmental crimes, working with the security, defense that are at the borders. Remember, they are not deployed inside the park, but to help us manage the border. At MAJOC level with all other security forces, that's how they are working. It has just been confirmed here, we do not know of any ex-combatant in any of our parks. If there is indeed, that investigation should start now. Perhaps Mariana should tell us exactly where are these, this allegation that's been made, where are they?
So I can just read you a line that was sent to me, basically, and it says here, there is a new anti-poaching organization in South Africa that employs highly skilled post-9/11 US veterans to stop poaching of elephants.
Where is it?
That's a statement that was sent to me, and they are advertising the thing. I can send it through. And they say, these veterans use counter-insurgency techniques they learned while serving in Iraq and Afghanistan to work with local park rangers to protect the...
Oh, they are advertising.
No, it's they are asking us, don't we want to interview the head of these people in here? They're saying they're employing hundreds. So it is on the basis of that.
Definitely we'll have to check. Thank you very much for even volunteering this information, but certainly not in our parks. We are not even aware of those. We have to follow, Minister, as you said. The issue, next question about the numbers, I think you can do. But before you do that, I'll come back just to summarize.
Okay, thank you, Minister. In terms of our figures around stockpiles, we don't give figures around stockpiles, and we don't indicate locations of stockpiles either, for obvious reasons. However, in terms of the numbers that were killed in the provinces, I can give you those statistics. The highest number of poaching incidents were in KwaZulu-Natal, as mentioned in the Minister's statement. There we were looking at approximately 133. I don't know if you want me to go through the entire list. Okay. Gauteng was 1, Limpopo 41, Northwest 45, the Western Cape we didn't have any incidents, Northern Cape 17, Free State 24, Eastern Cape 3, Mpumalanga 22.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to be difficult. While it may be very obvious for you why you do not give out, I could understand locations, but kilograms of stockpiles. What are your reasons?
Marian, I'll request that we go through the chairperson when we ask questions, so that we avoid dialogues, please. Thank you. All right.
Okay, we've had a couple of instances in where our stockpiles were compromised, but we can sort of give you a ballpark figure. It's less than 10 tons outside.
Thanks, John.
Okay, just very quickly, Mariana, again, I don't have these figures where I have what I'm sitting here about support officers. Yes, there are. Jobs to be created. Yes, there are. Information is there. Donations, we have just given the number. But the full program of what will be done is available here, and that can be shared with you. It's about the community work that we'll be doing at a community level. It's, as I said, up to 3 feet level plans that will be done. So that's how I think I can summarize it. And Stroop, attacks in an orphanage, I'm sure you have some information around that. In KwaZulu-Natal? No.
The Minister, I'll have to follow up on that and provide that information.
Will the lifting of the moratorium have an impact on these cases? Yeah.
Minister, in terms of it, there's a multitude of charges. And there's different pieces of legislation under which they are being charged as well. So at this stage, there might be a slight impact in terms of the charges, but as I said, there are a multitude of charges under which the current perpetrators are being charged. And that information we'll have to confirm with the DPP as well, Minister.
Yeah, but we have confirmed it, remember, okay? Yeah. I think what has come out, lady from Stroop, is that it's not all the charges that would be impacted upon by the lifting of a moratorium. There will be some other charges that will still remain. And we assess this in particular with a case of one of our fellow South Africans who has been tried over a long time from Polokwane side. That's a case of Grunewald. So, because there are so many charges, some of them will still stand, and some would have been affected, obviously, by the moratorium. especially because the moratorium, as it was judged upon by the court, it says that it's actually lifted retrospectively. Retrospectively, meaning that we are where we were in 2008. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've really exhausted this particular discussion. If you go to the Minister's budget speech, there's also a section that talks to biodiversity economy. The numbers are also contained in there in terms of the targets aligned with the NDP as well. Pretoria, thank you so much. Cape Town, thank you. Ministers, thank you so much for making time to brief the nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Copies of the statement are available and we'll mail them.